Russia has been completely hysterical over the last year. We are told that there are huge skyscrapers of meat factories in which Uyghurs are being chopped up and made into mincemeats, and that meat is being exported to Africa, making us all cannibals and so on. And I think that neocolonialism was always an experiment to see if we can manage our exploitation and repression this way. And having failed, the West has made the simple, obvious decision: end it, take over again. There are obviously huge complexities about the manner in which this reassertion of direct imperial control will happen. There are many, many different things going on. So the first is, if you like, the battle for hearts and minds, ideological warfare. The West, for reasons of its colonial history and for reasons of just sheer effort it puts into it, dominates the African media scene, especially as regards how Africa sees the rest of the world. For example, Russia, Ukraine, or US, China, are presented to Africa directly by a handful of Western or Western allied media houses. BBC, I think, remains the most influential broadcaster in Africa, but it's not the only one. All of these stations, government funded, direct, agencies, if you like, of various ministries of foreign affairs, maintain 24-hour a day with the main purpose of shaping how we think, particularly about conflict situations or coming conflict situations. And that's important because even the indigenous African stations, because we seldom have the capacity for independent news gathering, you'll find that station after station collects its international news direct from one of these other stations. In most cases, without even editing the language. You hear the same reports on a Ghanaian radio station that you hear on BBC. Same word for word reproduction. And you also have, though increasingly perhaps less influential with the masses, but important for the quote-unquote intellectual classes, a huge effort to control what the print media does. So the Brentworth Foundation that funds a lot of media in Africa, in alliance often with the National Endowment for Democracy, which is actually a State Department agency. And so there's a system of research grants, there's a system of fellowships, revolving doors between media houses and these foundations. And there are even allegations of direct personal payments to journalists, which ensure that they produce a certain kind of content. And because they are better resourced, and because they're better able to produce the glossy media stuff and so on, they tend to dominate the written media. Now, the messaging they're putting out there, setting that, essentially we're being told that development means being more like the US, being more like Western Europe. But there's also increasingly a shrill and very crude kind of propaganda being waged against the countries that the West considers its enemies. Russia has been completely hysterical over the last year. We are told that there are huge skyscrapers of meat factories in which, Uyghurs are being chopped up and made into mincemeats, and that meat is being exported to Africa and making us all cannibals and so on. I know it sounds crazy, and I know I've learned in the last week how difficult it is for the Chinese public to take this seriously. But again, the point I was making is that the media assault is total. it's not just about these silly stories. It also involves an ideological orientation towards the mystic, towards superstition, towards irrationality. So you'll find in the African media that the media houses that thrive are those that are providing support to some of these wildly right-wing evangelical churches. And they have money to pay huge money for advertising space. Typically in Africa, the first few hours of the day, from 4 o'clock to like 6:30, are occupied by religious sermons. You have a priest launching into all sorts of things. And this is what people start their day with. So you have to understand that in the context in which people have become so used to irrationality, stories that suggest that other parts of the world are driven by irrational behavior are not difficult to swallow. So it is true that the propaganda being waged against China, being waged against Russia, are ridiculous, but don't dismiss them just because of that.
快来订阅通识，按旁边小铃铛给我们点赞和分享哦。如果有什么想说的，也欢迎在下面多多留言呀。